Do you honestly believe the U.S. government, this current U.S. government hates black people?
Well, the current U.S. government system is of the same system and same structure that it's always been. And it's, we can call it mislike, we can call it antipathy. But regardless, there is a difference in how the government treats and addresses black people or Africans in America in the way they do other groups.
Can you give me a couple
America.
examples?
Sure, and I'm glad you asked that. It's a great alley-oop, I call it, right? I'm a slam dunk it. So if your audience, right, who are probably going crazy right now, this guy, said these things, the government hates black people. I want everyone to look up things like the war on drugs, which has targeted black people, mass incarceration. The FBI director, James Comey himself, and the New York head of police also said the origin of policing came from slave catching. We also can look at black codes, vagrancy tactics, the bombing in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the bombing in Philly of the Moo family, all done by the U.S. government towards African people in America.
So you would say arresting people and keeping law and order is anti-black? By saying that, are you saying that black people inherently are the ones committing the crimes?
No, what I'm saying is that having a system, a structure in place, right, from the post-freedom or enslavement of black people, and where a system was created called the convict leasing system by our government, and where the same year that slaves were free, they created laws called vagrancy tactics that made it illegal for blacks to be homeless and would lock blacks up and put them in a convict leasing system.
But see, here's the thing. I hear what you're talking about with respect to America's history.
Right.
The
same practices are happening today.
Well, I see homeless people all over the place, but I still don't see where you're justifying your current anger toward America or the American government. I can see you being upset about what may have happened in the past, but you cannot say it's occurring. Of course it's changed. The fact that you're in this studio right now talking the way you are is the best proof in the world that it's changed.
The fact that the 13th Amendment still says slavery was abolished except you commit a crime says that things are still the same. And when you have inmates working in prison, majority of whom are Africans in America, who are making 20 and 30 cents a day.
Jay, why are the majority of people in prison of African descent?
Because the African people in America were never repaired after their enslavement, after their Jim Crow, after the government redlined them, after the government never gave any restitution for the Holocaust enslavement of African people. So if you don't repair a people or you put them in ghettos, and you put them poor and uneducated in ghettos, you're going to get that kind of activity.
You know, it's interesting when we have this conversation, sometimes I drive home on the West Side Highway. It's a little cluttered, so I'll take the slow route. And I drive through some of my old neighborhoods that I lived in throughout Harlem. And I see them now, and they're becoming what they call gentrified. So it's the same neighborhood, the same buildings, but less graffiti, less garbage on the street.
Correct.
So what makes a ghetto? Not the buildings, not the neighborhood, right?
Correct.
Right. So the way people treat the buildings in the neighborhood makes it a ghetto. Who can you blame that on other than the person in the mirror?
There's two accountabilities. There is self-accountability for Africans in America, that we have to repair ourselves because of the trauma that we suffered. But I liken it to if you take someone who was kidnapped, right, or a woman or a man who was molested for several years, and then they're pushed out of the house that they were molested in, and then they go out in the streets and they're promiscuous. You blame them for being promiscuous, but you don't blame the person who caused the trauma.
Yeah, it's a stretch.
See, it's not a stretch.
It's a stretch.
Was there or was there not? So if there was never trauma for this kind of treatment, right? I'm talking about the human rights violations of Africans.
We're talking about the individual, not the history. One thing, I got to tell you something.
They come together, King.
They don't.
They come together. If they did, if there wasn't a need for repair of people, then the Japanese Americans wouldn't have been repaired or had restitution after their 2 years internment camps in America. Or the Jewish Germans wouldn't have gotten repair or
reparation. Are you saying all it would take in your mind then is some sort of restitution check from the government?
I didn't say check.
No, well, you're saying some sort of restitution.
Repair aid, restoration.
Let me tell you something. There are no black people in America right now who were ever slaves. Not a single one.
Right.
There are no white people in America at this point who were ever slave owners.
Correct.
Okay.
But is there not residual effects of that?
The overwhelming majority.
Are there no residual effects of that?
Not for the average person on either side.
Is there no long-lasting trauma?
Not for the average person for the either side.
How did the black people get into the ghettos you talked about?
You have to escape
Did the government not redline black people, put red lines on the map? Google it if you don't know, King. The government put black people into ghettos through redlining. That created it.
Jay.
Is that right or wrong?
Ultimately, we are in a point right now.
Did the government not create COINTELPRO? A government program that broke up civil rights leaders and assassinated our people. Did the government not do that? You can put good people in a bad system. If the company culture is screwed up, then it's going to play out in the market? Well, the market for us is a treatment of African people in America. And it's proven by, Jane Elliott said it best. You can ask a room full of European Americans, white people, and ask them, would you trade places with the treatment of African American? And not one would say yes. If it was fair, they all would say, sure, I would. So ask your white friends at home and ask them, would you trade places with the treatment of black people in America? And not one would, because we all know it's unfair.
Well, I don't want to speak for all white people here, but I will say a lot of people would probably turn around and say the worst part about the treatment of black people in America is how black people treat each other in America.
But see, why is it always a spin?
It's not a spin. It's a fact. If we're laying out the factual issues and we're going to rank them in terms of what's the most critical in terms of making black life miserable in America, I personally think I would put the way black people treat black people at the top.
I'm all for self-accountability. I call you king, and I call all our black women queens to purposely elevate and uplift them. That's what I've been doing it for a year now. I don't use any other words other than king or queen referring to our own, because we've been personally degraded. We degrade ourselves, and we've been degraded. But we always spin the point.
It's not a spin. How do we fix that?
You have to take.
How do we fix that? Black people killing black people.
When does the perpetrator take acceptance? Right? You want the victim to take acceptance, but when does the perpetrator, the government who created the system,
not the government,
that has abused and traumatized the people?
Not the government. I'm talking about the young brothers who are going to kill each other this weekend all across this country. I know what you're talking about. I'm okay with self-accountability. Killing each other?
No, I'm okay with self-accountability.
How do we fix that then?
How do we fix that? It's through our repair curriculum. Right now, we're repairing ourselves by unifying ourselves. I have a solution for us. The solution for us is for us to get some self-dignity, self-pride by us unifying, understanding that before we're American, we're African first. That's why it's African American. And when African people realize that we are one people who are the source of African cultures and tribes and countries that were brought here, captured here, and been left in this crap to deal with it ourselves, then we'll unite and we'll fix our own problems. But we cannot forget the perpetrator who caused this misery for us.
I think we're all Americans first and foremost.
You're not.
First and foremost, yes. I am an American, and
You're
I'm of African descent, and I'm proud of that.
Right.
But I'm more proud of being an American more than anything else.
Were American, they were African.
It doesn't matter. There are people going to be
free Africans.
Jay, they're going to be people sworn in tomorrow.
Before they were colonized Americans, they were free Africans.
They're going to be people sworn in tomorrow, and guess what? They're going to have tears streaming down their eyes because they get to be a part of this great American dream.
They want to assimilate,
and they will call themselves
while the majority of their people are in misery. I get it. I'm doing well for myself. You're doing well. There's a 10% of us that do well. But what about the rest of us who are left in the ghettos, who are left in poverty, who are left with low education, who are left to deal with this?
And yet,
don't forget about your people, King.
And yet, no, well, listen. By saying being honest,
who caused this misery for your people? Who caused this misery for your people?
I know
what system did.
The misery I've seen in my own life, most of it against black people, have been at the hands of other.
And what's the other?
The murders I've seen.
Other?
The stabbings I've seen.
Who put them in that condition?
The harm I've seen.
Who put them in that condition? Who broke them down that way?
Okay, that's what I've seen.
Who degraded them that way? Who demoralized them that way?
Ultimately, Jay.
Who dehumanized them that way? Where did they get that condition from, King?
Jay, ultimately, it's not going to wash. It doesn't wash now.
What's the root of black people being in the condition they are?